it's made with silk, for example. And as we know, for men, you cannot wear clothing made of silk. وَغُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, that you were raised upon and nourished upon haram. If you were raised upon and nourished upon haram, what can that possibly mean? That the income that you were raised upon was income earned through haram means that ultimately you were raised upon. Maybe it means that as well. Or it means perhaps that the way you were nourished, the food that you ate, the drink that you drank, the clothing that you wore, the house that you grew up in was all, non-permissible things. Whatever the meaning of that is, it's mentioned here that as a result of these things, the du'as of that person was not accepted. Now, the topic again is spiritually strong believer. The spiritually strong believer. How can we be a spiritually strong believer if our prayers are not getting accepted and that's all that we have? What's happening in Palestine, every one of us, probably on a daily basis, our hearts are being shattered again and again, again and again, again and again. Every time we think it can't get worse, it gets worse. Or every time we think we can't tolerate anymore and see anything worse, we end up running into something far worse than what we saw before. So then what is the only thing that we can do? And we want to financially support, we want to physically go and support, we want to do what we can, but unfortunately we are barred from many of those things. Again, now as a Muslim, we're sitting there reflecting, thinking, Ya Allah, what can I do? What can I do? My whole existence wants me to go and do something about it. So what do I have? And not to diminish the value and the quality of the prayer, but really, that's really all we have, right? It's our du'as, it's our prayers. And it's not saying that prayers are not powerful, but it's saying that if that's our last line of defense, our du'as and our prayers, then why would we jeopardize that only link that we have to support our brothers and sisters who are suffering, but also our own selves? Ramadan is coming. Ramadan is here. And our du'as, if they're not getting accepted, this is such a loss. Such a loss. And this is what links us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is our crying, our fasting, our praying, and our making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we're learning that these things could be the means by which our prayers are not accepted. Then what do we have left? So very interestingly, there's a related to that point, that previous hadith, there's an incident. And it's under misconceptions because this is a conversation for another topic, but it's all relevant, it's all connected. There was an incident once, I'm not going to open up that can of worms, but there was a situation that happened once in the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, where he had a servant, and that servant was preparing some food that day, some meal or some food for him. And, in the previous hadith we mentioned that وَغُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, that you were nourished upon haram. The Prophet ﷺ says, if you were nourished upon haram, then this is one of the means by which your prayers would not be accepted. So in this statement here, is a story. Once Abu Bakr as-Siddiq comes home, and when he comes home, the servant has the meals ready and prepped and prepared. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is getting ready to have his meal. And as he's beginning to eat, the servant tells him the story of how he prepared this meal. So he says to him, "Oh, Abu Bakr, do you know where I got the money for this? How I prepared this meal for you?" He goes, "No." So he says, "I'll tell you." He says, "Back in Jahiliyyah, before Islam, I used to try to scrape up some money by doing side jobs and side work and business. And I found that one way I could make good amount of money is by doing like palm reading. Like palm reading and reading stars, which, is considered totally haram and it's not an income that you would like to provide for your family for. But he said, I did this before Islam. And he said I wasn't even good at it, but people would pay for it if I did it. So I made all this money and I saved that money. And today I use that money to prepare you this special meal. So what this statement says here, هذا الذي أكلت منه فأدخل أبو بكر يده فقاع كل شيء في بطني. So he says, the servant says, this is the food that you are eating now from, is from the money that I earned from that haram job, which was palm reading and thing and reading the stars and things like that. So what was the result and the action or reaction of Abu Bakr Siddiq upon hearing that news? He put his hand in his mouth and he threw up everything that he ate from his servant's dish. Now, as a disclaimer, I am not encouraging or endorsing that anybody, put their hand and throw up if they encounter a situation like this. However, you see the seriousness that Abu Bakr Siddiq took upon himself to not allow a single bite of haram income and haram food and haram money to enter into his system. It's very interesting that in the commentary of this in this hadith statement, they mentioned, the scholars, the muhaddithin, they mentioned, then why was he so, so the action was so kind of not extreme, but it was kind of out of ordinary. That you hear something, maybe sometimes how we would react, you're like, oh, astaghfirullah, and you're just glad you bite that, whatever. Astaghfirullah, you gargle with some water, wash it down. Maybe that's how we would have reacted. But Abu Bakr Siddiq took this drastic approach where he put his hand in his mouth and he all this food. And the commentators mentioned of this hadith that had Abu Bakr Siddiq eaten that food and the food would have entered his bloodstream, then that would have nourished his body. And if it nourished his body, then it would have been a part of him. Now going back to the previous hadith, the statement was وَغُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, that anyone who is nourished upon haram, their du'as would not be accepted. So Abu Bakr Siddiq brought the food in his stomach fast and not allow that food to nourish him. As a result, his prayers not being accepted. Again, as a disclaimer, I'm not saying that you have to be now throwing up everywhere, I'm encouraging behavior, but it's to highlight that this was a reality, that this happened. This was how the Sahaba took it so seriously to not allow a single bite of haram to enter the system, such that it would jeopardize or even potentially jeopardize the acceptability of their prayers with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's mentioned regarding one of the pious scholars of the past, I think it was Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, that he was living in Iraq, and in Iraq at that time he had heard, and I don't want to quote this incorrectly, but one of the scholars of the past, that in his area in Iraq, that the farmers had stolen the land, and they planted their crops on stolen land. So for some next number of years, 10, 20, 30 years, this scholar refused to eat any fruit or vegetables from that city. And he chose to go out of his way to a distant city to buy the fruit from there, so that he would not be an accomplice in eating from stolen land crops. Again, highlighting how important it is and how significant it is that we should be so observant and cautious and concerned about the we consume, such that it does not impact or jeopardize the quality of our prayers. So there's another thing, inshallah, also that I want to go over. And this is also very interesting. That it's also a hadith that we've heard before. But again, we're talking about the quality of being a strong believer, wanting to maintain a relationship with Allah, wanting to purify ourselves, heart, and mind. One way of purification is ensuring that the food that we consume is halal and tayyib, that we're eating properly, that we're not eating food that is questionable or doubtful, or engaging in food consumption of things that we're so careless about, that can harm us health-wise, that can harm us spiritually. So this hadith, عن نعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنهما قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهوى النعمان إلى أذنيه. So this Sahabi, Nu'man ibn Bashir, he said that I heard this from the Messenger of Allah. He pointed to his ears, indicating that I heard this meaning. I heard this directly, this hadith. إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما مشتبهات وبينهما مشتبهات لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس فمن اتقى الشبهات فقد استبرأ لدينه وعرضه ومن وقع في الشبهات وقع في الحرام. So the hadith is that which is halal is clear, that which is haram is clear. Meaning there's no doubt about those two categories. Water, for example, is halal, no questions asked. Pork and alcohol is haram, and we know that, no questions asked. But then he says, وَبَيْنَهُمْ, but between those two categories, the gray area, right? Certain chips products, drinks, cookies, snacks, or whatever, anything between that, there's a gray area that most people are not fully aware of. لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. That many people are unaware of. And they are not experts in that field. And truly and rightfully so, how many people can pick up a gum and read anything that says on the ingredient? Very few people can understand. We read it, but we don't understand what it's saying. My dear colleague and friend is, I don't even know what his job is. He's watching this, he's gonna be upset. I'm working with him for like 14 years. But I don't know what his degree is in science. Kind of reminds me of brain at the end of the thing. But he's a food scientist, he went to college for it, and that's his degree. And he is the only person that I know who can pick up all of ingredients, all this confusing 14-letter word, and tell you exactly what they are. I'm sure our panelists could all do this, but I definitely can't. So, reading that is a very difficult thing. So you don't know what is ingredients in there that are not permissible for consumption, and you don't know what is halal and what is haram. So the point is that most people don't. I myself admitting I don't know most of the ingredients. So what does the hadith say? Anyone who avoids the doubtful thing has safeguarded his honor and his religion. And anyone who has just blindly consumed doubtful things has as if they have fallen directly into the hellfire. So the commentator has explained why. Why is it that if I avoid doubtful things, I have protected my honor in my religion? Because the ulama mentioned that if a person is consuming food that is doubtful, you don't know fully if it's halal, you fully don't know if it's haram, so you're like, you know what, let's take a chance on this and I'm just going to eat it anyway. So how do you protect your honor and your religion? Well, if it was actually haram, now you've impacted your religion. Why? As a result of consuming haram food, your prayers are now at risk of not being accepted, and ultimately your du'as will not be accepted. And there's a whole slew of other things that will be impacted as a result of eating and consuming halal. However, that's just your religion. How about your honor? If you're a Muslim, generally Muslims, right, you want to make sure you're practicing Muslim, you are concerned that you should not be engaging in anything that puts your image in the wrong place. For example, there's a hadith that mentions اتقوا مواضع التهم, that a person should avoid being in places of blame. People often say, you can't judge me. Don't only God can judge me. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like half true. But if you put yourself in a place of blame, the default reaction is going to be, hey, if a police officer is wearing a uniform, I'm going to assume he's a police officer. And if you're just playing tag on Halloween, but you've got the police uniform on, it's going to be a little bit tricky. You're going to get mistaken. And you can't get mad for people mistaking you for that. So in any case, as a Muslim, we would not like to be in places of blame. Similarly, if we're a Muslim, we're concerned that our honor should not be debased. As a result, as a practicing Muslim, if I'm eating something, I should probably be concerned and ensure that the thing that I'm eating is certainly halal. Because now if somebody else sees me and they're like, oh, Imam, you're eating that thing? And now there's like a whole issue with your image and your public persona that this Imam eats at his establishment. One of my teachers one time, he went inside of the Safeway, and I don't know why, but he tagged it on his social media. And really, sometimes people might think it's silly, but people really are commenting. It's Safeway law. He's like, no, you just won't even tag it anymore. Get the whole issue actually. So in any case, it's very important that we protect our honor. So if we engage in the doubtful, then chances are we will harm on and put our religion at risk. So if we safeguard by not eating doubtful, we've protected our religion and protected our honor. And as for the one who engages and just doesn't care, وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ, and you engage in all the doubtful things, وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ, it's as if you're totally fallen into the sinful haram totally. Why? And then he gives the example. The example of like a shepherd. If a shepherd has a specific area where his flock can graze, then that's fine, because it's clear. You have this area, you can graze it. But then he says, you sheep on yaqa fi. But now, if your sheep are getting close to the neighbor's yard, right? When the sheep are in your yard, it's clear. But when the sheep start getting close to the neighbor's yard, and now you can't tell the difference. Whether the sheep are eating the grass on my yard, or slowly eating on the border and into the yard of my neighbor, you're engaging in haram. And that's the example of engaging in doubt. When you engage in the doubtful things, or consume the doubtful thing, just like you wouldn't be able to tell if the flock of sheep are sitting on the border between your yard and the neighbor's yard, and you don't know if they're eating my grass or their grass. You don't know if you're eating halal or eating halal. It's all mixed for you. It's as if the whole thing becomes sinful. So then the hadith shifts and it says, أَلَا وَإِنَّ لِكُلِّ مَلِكٍ حِمَى أَلَا وَإِنَّ حِمَى اللَّهِ مَحَارِمُ. So then he says that every person of dignity and honor has their own safeguarded, protected area. Everyone has their honor and dignity. Everyone has their limits and borders. أَلَا وَإِنَّ حِمَى اللَّهِ مَحَارِمُ. And the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are that you should not cross over into the prohibition and the prohibited thing. ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. So now this whole talk back to the concept of spirituality and being a spiritually strong believer and being cautious of what we consume and Ramadan being very important. The end of this hadith states that in our body there is a piece of flesh, that if that piece of flesh is good and sound, then our whole body will be good and sound. But if that piece of flesh in our body is rotten and wretched, then everything in our body will be rotten and wretched. And what is that piece of flesh in our body? It's our heart. Our heart. How does this hadith tie in all these things that I mentioned? And I'll summarize that now. That first and foremost, the hadith is talking about our relationship to the things that we are bringing into our life. That we should be cognizant and aware that what we are consuming, we should have one that thing is halal and pure. The second thing is that we should be avoiding those things which are doubtful. And we should try our absolute best to avoid engaging in anything that is doubtful. Because if we don't, it's as if we have fallen into the haram. And if we have fallen into the haram and sinful, then we risk our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We risk that piece of flesh in our body, which is the heart, become rotten. This is what we risk. This is what's at stake. Because if we eat halal, then we are safe. And if we are safe, then our heart, inshallah, will be pure. And our body will be pure. But if we eat the doubtful and engage in doubtful action, this will lead to the corruption of the heart. And the corruption of the heart will lead us to sin. And that sin ultimately will break that relationship that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in being and in keeping up with the topic and title of being a spiritually strong believer, look how much importance and significance there is to the food that we consume and the products we put in our bodies and our system. Why it's so important that we should be cautious of this. Why it's so important that we don't treat this like an extracurricular subject that we think about when we have time to eat, but that we don't give that much significance to. We should treat this like a primary subject in our life. We are the guardians and the custodians of our own home. We are either the income provider or the homemaker of our home. And in both cases, it is so important for us to take these things into consideration, such that, again, with Ramadan right around the corner, our only last line of defense being our prayers and du'as being accepted, that if we know that these things will jeopardize it, yes, I know I was born in America, I want to eat everything outside. I want to go to all these fast food restaurants. I grew up here. I went to all the grocery stores. I want to eat those quick meats off of the thing, but you don't. You don't. You don't. Because we're a Muslim and we're part of that community in Torah. If you're part of a club, you have to follow the club rule. If you join a fraternity or you abide by those laws. The Prophet ﷺ told people his argument is, oh, I can't have that. That is correct. We cannot have some things in life. This life is like a prison for the dunya. And guess what? When you can't go out to eat something at Safeway or one of these fast food restaurants, it feels like you're in jail sometimes, right? Oh man, I can't have that thing. It's terrible. And then when we go for Umrah, we feel like we're free from prison, and then we get to go eat everything. But that is the feeling that we feel sometimes. Like we're trapped, like we're stuck, like we can't eat anything, like we have no alternative, no option. Yes, that is correct. But guess what? We still move along. We still obey by the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, nobody's starving, no one is gonna die if they eat, McDonald's. It's okay. Nothing's gonna happen. We have so many halal restaurants, so many meat markets, and all these alternative options. That argument, essentially doesn't have or shouldn't hold any additional weight anymore. I can understand maybe at a time that was something, that people would say, oh, there's no, very difficult to find. But that's not the case today. So this next hadith, the Prophet mentioned, whoever consumes intoxicants, his salah will not be accepted for 40 days. This is a hadith mentioned in Sunan that the Prophet mentioned this with regard to foods or impermissible intoxicants or anything that a person takes. This means that you lose the reward of your prayers. All of these doubtful things, all of these haram things that we consume, or if we consume them, they affect our status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in preparation for Ramadan, we should, I know sometimes we hear a lot of in preparation for Ramadan workshops, they're all like the to-do thing. Do this, wake up at this time, pray this, get off your phone. All those things that we hear. It's full of things to do. So I know this is maybe a little bit different because these are all the things to avoid. These are all the things to abstain from. These are all sort of like the warning stuff. Like, let's avoid this and let's avoid that. And inshallah, this is also beneficial. Because, it just puts a spin on the way that maybe we've been doing things for some years. And now we can look at things at this point that, hey, I don't want that my prayer should not be accepted for 40 days. Ramadan is like 30 days. That means my whole Ramadan I will miss out on? Yeah. And guess what? We still have to fast those 30 days. And we still have to pray in those 30 days. But you lose the reward and the spiritual benefit of those prayers and fasting if we're doing haram and intoxicating things before the month. And the last thing that I'll stop on, inshallah, and I think we'll go ahead and wrap up on my side, is we should seek the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these times. And not to just leave ourselves nagging. Because again, we need Allah. We need the dua to be accepted. We need to be turning to Allah. We ask Allah, Allahumma kfini bi halalika an haramik, waghnini bi fadlika amman siwak. We ask and we pray that, oh Allah, suffice for us with your halal from the halal. Make sufficient that which is available to me from your halal. From what exists of the halal. And by your grace, keep me independent from anything and anyone besides you, O Allah. Make me solely dependent upon you. This is a mind frame. This is a way to view the world that we live in. That when we change our perspective on things, we look at the world this way. Oh Allah, I want your Allah only and keep your Allah for me away from the power that exists. And make me by your grace, oh Allah, dependent solely upon you and nobody else. It's a mindset. So the takeaway lesson from this being that always seek the halal options. Never suffice for yourself or for your loved ones with haram. and seek your independence from everyone else. And especially going into Ramadan now, it's probably better that we kind of focus on our own goals. It's good to be social, and this is a very good thing. But sometimes it's also quite beneficial to focus on themselves, to be independent and to be on your own and fully dependent with Allah in the month of Ramadan may not be a bad thing. It's a good thing. We pray and ask Allah that He bless us, that we reach the month of Ramadan. And even though it's coming, but still, you never know. We ask Allah to allow us to reach the month of Ramadan, that Allah make this a blessed time of transformation and change for one and all. And we ask Allah for more of His support and divine tawfiq, that we continue to, to grow and to develop ourselves and our character in this blessed month and to maintain that spiritual relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah.
I have a couple of questions from the one, how do we go to, let's say, friends' homes that we know that say they may possibly cooking pasta with like some type of wine sauce, you know, and they say, "Oh, let's cook down," and we're like, "But it's still alcohol." Like, how do you not argue with like a friend that calls themselves if we feel like for us that part of avoiding out, like that's something that's not allowed. So how do we kind of balance that like tension in the air when it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll eat salad, you know? Sometimes they didn't use vinaigrette with mine and you know.
It's definitely the short, what's important to you is to ensure that you're not putting anything into your system. And if they're a close friend, right, this is my take on it. If they're a close friend, somebody you know well, you can take them to the side and ask them. And the reality is like, look, we shouldn't be afraid or concerned about it. If you know that this person has the knowledge that these things are halal, these things are haram, then you make no fuss about it. But if you know that there's been incidents in the past, or there's doubt, etc., we shouldn't feel a type of awkwardness or tension. Because to say, well, the sin will be on them, okay, the sin will be on them, but what type of relationship is that with your friends? You're like, yeah, the sin is on them. You eat your haram, and I'm going to be okay with my halal salad. We can take them to the side with love, with care, and affection. You're haram, food is haram, and you ruined my night. That's not the way of wisdom. The way of wisdom would be to take them to the side and say, hey, I just wanted to ask, I'm on a real particular diet, and I just want to know if there's anything like alcohol or anything in this, or if say, hey, I don't feel comfortable eating that. And use wisdom and use your best judgment to approach them because at the end of the day, obviously you can't consume that. And instead of making a scene in front of everyone publicly, the best approach would be to do it beforehand. Or if you know ahead of time where you're going, there's alternatives to make that, I'll bring the pasta, something else to kind of mitigate that situation. But what I would certainly say to avoid is any type of like agitated sort of response or anything like that, because those responses never yield positive results. Yeah.
I call it my really she's really good at asking restaurants if they're good beefas, right? Because there's a lot of restaurants that say that they're halal, but they're not actually good beefas every time. So I have a problem with that because we go to these restaurants and make good if they're halal, but they're not good beefas. So how do we how can we be comfortable if there's a Muslim restaurant calling themselves halal? And then that term of the beefa versus halal, people like halal is walking across the street with clothes on, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. It's a very good question. And the only thing I would say is that I would normally, I will answer, but I'm just saying like that topic and questions of that nature is for another topic, only because that's not the focus of this. The focus of today's topic is spirituality. But I will answer that in the sense that it is an issue. Mislabeling, misrepresentation in this country is a very big thing. There are unfortunately no laws against it. The only law in America that exists about mislabeling product is that if it says halal but it's not halal and you can prove that as for the terms that we have, halal, half halal, all those things, There's no regulation. That's why third-party organizations exist. And today, represent HAFSA is a certification body which focuses on, and that's our primary objective, is to provide education to the community on these topics and to kind of dispel some of the misconceptions. So it's unfortunate, but I would say get in touch and have that conversation in a different capacity.
Just wanted to thank you so much for sharing with wisdom. Just wanted to clarify the word said pure and also food. What does it exactly mean? What it includes with food?
Sorry, say that again.
How do we know the food is pure and wholesome? And even if we are in our but in specifics.
You mean for the work that you
There's one I have was when I'm done and type in
Yeah.
one month. But it's equal. It's like we have to eat halal, but also Thai.
So but to clarify, sometimes the use halal and tayyib mean the same thing. But a better interpretation of that would be that halal, like kind of like the mentioned, is our understanding of all things permissible in the Sharia. Specifically, in this context, we refer to the food that we're consuming, that it is halal or dhabiha, in the sense that it's slaughtered the right way, the name of Allah is taken upon it by a Muslim. And that's the bare minimum. That you have an animal that you sacrifice and then you consume it and you're like, okay, that's halal. But for example, maybe the condition that animal was living in was not the best condition. It was in a tight cage, given bad quality food. Maybe it was abused, but you slaughter it the right way, you say the name of Allah. So it's halal, you can eat it, but is it the best food that you can eat? No. That's like the best conditions, the best quality, the highest quality product you could find. This is considered tayyib. So if we look at it from this point of view, that halal is just the bare minimum requirement for a Muslim to consume it, that means it's halal. But that doesn't mean, because I could then say, I have one chicken that has 10 acres of grass, it can run out, eat worms, play, have a good time. And another chicken that's locked in my closet and dark, no sunlight, cramped in a tiny spot. I will sacrifice both of them the same way. Both are halal to eat, but definitely the chicken that ran on the grass is much healthier, better, much higher quality than the chicken locked in my closet. In this case, of course, the better we can as Muslims show is everything with ihsan, the best way, the most best, the purest possible way. That's why even in Zakh, when we slaughter them, the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam says, فَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ أَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. That when you're going to sacrifice an animal, then do it in the best possible way. So absolutely, the more closer we can get to the higher quality, the more effect we have on our body and our relationship. You're right. Absolutely, you're right. Definitely. So much more can be said, but inshallah, we'll step by step. And I don't want to take more time, so one last. Okay.
Say when I'm last, but you send that moment, I would say, this week, pretty much every other most beautiful convenience store that, what's in my column.
What's not? What? Yeah, yeah. Of course. No, you're right. And I didn't know we did. Of course. Certainly. Yeah, so when I made the comment about Safeway earlier, basically I'm just clarifying that not everything that establishment is completely haram. We need bread and other things and fruit, vegetables, other things, we need spices. These things are fine. But my point is that there's clear difference when we're talking about the meat that we're consuming. An animal that is slaughtered by a Muslim in the name of Allah is not the same as an animal that is not slaughtered by a Muslim without the name of Allah. That's the difference that I'm making. So wherever you find that, when you're else, and that is not found, then we should understand that which is halal and that which is not halal. So this is just the point that I'm making. And I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If anyone has more interest or questions or concerns about this specific topic about like halal food, the organization I represent is called HFS, the Halal Food Standards Alliance of America. You can go on the website, you can go on the social media, inshallah, you can get more information there. Again, I want to thank everyone for their time. Jazakallah khair.
Like one here, so once you can, having more ideas, like, for us,
Until we get those slides up. I just want to let you all know that there are also Sunnah inspired refreshments behind. So inshallah, if you want to take something. I was the last shaitan rubbish. Rubbish and sadri wa yasir rather of the Tamil of Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh everyone. My name is Ilham Malik and I'm a registered dietitian and my introduction was already given, but I just wanted to let you all know that if there is any questions that you'll have, you can find me on Instagram or you can that's from inshallah. So alhamdulillah, we already heard a lot about how to why to have a healthy Ramadan. So let's look quickly over these first few slides. But subhanAllah, I just want to mention that if there is so much guidance in our Quran and in our Hadith that the same verse that that Sheikh Jabir told a few minutes ago can also be interpreted, to also include food. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Believers, fasting is prescribed for you as it was for those before you. So perhaps you will become mindful of Allah." It's a simple, it's a simple verse which has so much meaning. If we take it, and if we touch it, ponder about it, inshallah. Fasting was prescribed to us as it was to those before us. This is when we were advised to stay away from halal food and drink because we need to increase our taqwa, we need to get closer to us. So this shows us that our relationship with what we eat, how we eat, is going to have a relationship with, with Allah, right? And fasting is such an action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that all other actions, there is a reward that He is already given. But fasting, the reward is only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has not yet told us what the reward is. And each one of us on the day of Qiyamah is going to be given this reward when we have fasted, inshallah. So staying away from food and drink affects our relationship with Allah. So what does this mean? Right? This, when you see it in this hadith as well, Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said, we went with Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam when we were young, when nothing. He said, "O young men, you should marry, for indeed it helps in lowering the gaze and protecting the chastity. Whoever among you is not able to marry, and must fast, but indeed fasting will give right?" So, subhanAllah, what we understand with this is that our food is connected to our heart, right? And this concept is, subhanAllah, such a beautiful concept that is present in Islam. And we need to focus on this, right? Because what we eat and how we eat is connected to our spirituality. This is not, this is not there in the other religions or in non-Muslims. And that is where you can see that right? If you they keep going into giving into their nuts, what does happen? First, they ate what they wanted, how they wanted, when they wanted, slept when they wanted, and then eventually it became it got to the point where they are now, we can become a man or a woman. What is there to stop us, right? So this is the reason why, subhanAllah, what Islam does is it gives us rules and guidance for each and every aspect of us. Because our whole point, what does Islam mean, is submitting to the will of God. So even when eating healthy is not easy, we need to understand that that is the whole point. The whole point of fasting is to control our nuts, is to restrict ourselves, right? And this also includes in other areas of the as well. When we are also not fasting, we need to make sure that we are eating halal with the because this is going to like have an effect on our spiritual state. So the next the verse of Quran that I want to bring to your attention is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us the beautiful, our most perfect prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a person, he ate and drank food as us. He was not an angel, right? So this gave us numerous hadiths as well. Apart from the verses in the Quran about what we should be eating and how we should be eating, we also have an example in our Prophet ﷺ of how he ate, what he ate, and various foods that he ate as well. So inshallah, we need to be more conscious of this and understand this more, that we have this perfect person as an example and how we can take this example into our daily life. Right? So it's not only about having a sunnah with honey or olives or flaxseed, it doesn't end over there, right? It goes beyond that. It goes into our everyday life. It goes into when we wake up, what are we eating? How are we eating? What is our breakfast preference? What are we grocery shopping? What are we getting our children? So this, when we talk about sunnah, it's not only on honey and olives and flaxseed. It actually applies to all the aspects of life, which I want to, inshallah, talk a little bit about today. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we just had a detailed explanation of Allah of food, Alhamdulillah. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. And it talks about what I mentioned, it talks about we are given a choice. SubhanAllah, we have heard of so many hadiths of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam where he had, he was hungry, he did not have food. He would wake up and he would ask, oh, Isha, what do you have today? And he would say, we have this, we have bread, and this, what a beautiful conversation it is, right? So this was not like Allah just put him in this situation. He was given a choice. Ibn Abbas reported that Allah sent an angel Jibreel to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he had another angel, right? And the angel said to Muhammad, Allah Almighty has given you the choice to be a servant or a prophet king. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned to angel Jibreel and he asked him, he said, okay, I'll be up here. Give me a hint, what should I do? And he said, choose to become Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, rather. So in fact, Prophet so thereafter, Prophet ﷺ never ate leisurely until he met his Sunnah. Right? So this choice now is given to us as well. Right? We are in this land where everything is in abundance. We go to a grocery store in SubhanAllah. There are rows and rows and aisles and aisles of food. Sometimes it's mind-boggling when we go to the grocery store because we want to buy everything, right? So we also have to understand that this is a choice that our Prophet made. And subhanAllah, we are following his examples so that by making this choice ourselves every day. So when we go to the grocery store and you are faced with this abundance choice, understand that we need to restrict ourselves and this now wrong. And obviously, the best way to do that is to make a grocery list, right? So we don't get tempted when we do grocery shopping. So, inshallah, like small practical tips that will help us follow the sunnah. We're going to continue getting into grocery shopping. And it was narrated by Abu Hurairah who said that by the one in whose hands my soul, the Prophet Sallallahu never ate his full wheat bread for 3 days in a row until Allah took his. So he never ate his full until he went out. So now we have to also, understand what we mean by being full. So inshallah, after that, we also have to understand another reason over here. Where Allah Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "The best of my followers are those living in my generation, and then those who follow. And then they will come to you after you people who bear witness without being able to do so, and be treacherous and untrustworthy. And the last part says, and fatness will appear." So we can see now that obesity has become an epidemic, right? The rate of obesity has increased to such an extent that people are concerned. But I also want to mention that this does not apply to any medical condition. Even if you have thyroid, or if you have arthritis, or if you have, other medical asthma, which you and you need steroid medications, and then you are big, or your body size is, on a larger side. It doesn't apply to this. It only applies when you have, come to this state because of excess eating and lack of exercise, right? So that is an information to me, especially as Muslims. We cannot just judge someone, we have to make this distinction that our health is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is also a test from us. And not everyone is blessed with perfect health, right? So someone who might be overweight can also, it can be because of medical conditions. So, moving on, we know that the Prophet Muhammad said a strong believer is better than the love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will all the rules are good and strive for that which will benefit you. So, inshallah, this hadith tells us that we need to work towards becoming a strong believer, right? So, what does this mean? Well, going to the gym is not easy. Eating healthy is not easy. And subhanAllah, that is there in every aspect of our religion, right? Waking up for Fajr, waking up for the Fajr is, when if you tell another like a non-Muslim, it's unheard of, right? Wow, we're making them 5 a.m., 4 a.m., right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives such blessings during this time. In fact, it says, the time shall Fajr when no one is awake. That is the time I'm going to be the closest to you, because He knows that harder you work, the better your rewards, right? When we are in work, for example, or when we are eating, when we are traveling, when we are sick, right? That time frame is so difficult. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, try for that which benefit you. And this also applies in, right? It's very easy to go for that which is easy, or which is, easily available, the ready-made foods, the fast foods. But inshallah, we need to work hard for that which is going to be benefiting us. So now that we have established that we need to, we need to work towards that. Now I'm going to talk about to become, right? What are the practical steps and how to attain this during Ramadan, inshallah. So this hadith, subhanAllah, is one of my favorite hadiths. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of this, but I'm going to go a little deeper into this hadith. The Prophet Muhammad said, a human being feels no less and worse than his stomach, and it is sufficient for him to have a few mouthfuls. Right? So what does this few mouthfuls mean? It means just a few bites. Right? And if he needs to eat, then it should be one third drink, one third air. Now imagine what you eat, right? If you can fill to the brim with clothes, with no space for water, or soap, or for it to move around, can that food, like, can those clothes be cleaned efficiently? No, right? So this is how it is even in our digestive system. If we are going to eat so much that there is no place or space for water which is needed to absorb all the nutrients or the nutrients that are inside, there is no space for the stomach to ensure all this, the food that you eat, it's not going to be that like absorbed. So even for example, if you're going to eat, for let's say a halal vegetarian two, again at 3 o'clock you're going to eat another halal vegetarian plate. Then again at 4 o'clock you're going to eat another halal vegetarian plate. How are you? You're not going to it's not going to be efficiently absorbed, it's not going to give you nourishment, it's not going to be beneficial for you. So we need to understand that yes, halal is very important, but at the same time, how much we eat is also equally important, right? So our stomach is a muscular organ, right? So what does muscle mean? It increases and decreases, right? We all go to the gym to increase our muscle. So our stomach is a muscular organ, and the capacity of the stomach is around 750 to 900, right? So subhanAllah, we say to one third that it approximately be around 50, and right? And it's obviously depends from person to person on a height and weight, but just to give you an idea. And 250 ml is a cup of water. So you can see how less of food we actually require to eat. And that is why a lot of people, especially when they turn 40 or 50 or 60, they start gaining weight and they think, God, I'm eating the same amount of food. But not gaining weight. This is why, because first your metabolism is reducing, second your activity is reducing, right? Earlier you were in college, gym, you're going to play sports, you're just so active, but then it's a hard job, you become sedentary. So then this weight starts building up, right? So we need to make sure that we are conscious of that. So what does this mean to have one third, right? How do you tell in terms of like a hunger focus scale? So for example, this scale is called a hunger focus scale, and it's a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is famished. You're so hungry that you're almost like, having dizziness and your hands are trembling. And then 10 is where you're so stuffed that you're physically not feeling well again, right? So this is the scale of 1 to 10. Now, as Muslim, where should we be? Ideally, we should be between 3 to 7, right? This is why we should try not to go to 1 and 2, because when we go to the famished or extremely hungry state, what happens during this state is we don't think of how and what we're eating, right? We just want to eat something and anything that is in front of us to uh, reduce that to hunger, to get rid of the fun. And what happens is when we eat in a hurry, we all tend to, right? We've all experienced that. When you are in a hurry, you tend to worry. And then after 15 to 20 minutes, which is the time taken by the stomach to tell you that you realize, oh my gosh, now I can. So we try to keep when we are at the scale of 3 and stop when we are at 7. That's satisfied. Now, what does this mean, satisfied? This means that we are no longer hungry, not when we are full. Now, you have to make that distinction, and that is going to come when you are mindful of what you're eating. When you are not watching TV or reading books or just doing some mindless activity, right? So you need to be satisfied. That means you shouldn't feel, but you should say, oh, I'm done. I'm done. I feel happy. I can get up and go. So we need to have a balance. We should eat so, and shouldn't eat so less that then you're constantly thinking about it, right? Wow. So another important time way that important ways from our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is that he said, "I do not eat while reclining." Right? So the position that he ate is very important. Because when you are eating, sitting upright and eating, your stomach is contract. Like it's contract, so you eat it. But what happens when you lay down is right? The stomach expands. So this means you also tend to eat more without remembering. And when do you relax and eat? That's when you watch TV, read a book, right? So subhanAllah, we should always also like getting the small thing of our the way we eat, the position we eat is going to influence how much we eat. And now coming to the next line. So subhanAllah, this Ramadan, when it started, just a couple of like such a blessed month that we're going to be welcoming into our life. And we fast, subhanAllah, to increase our taqwa, renew our faith. And we can literally also renew our mind. Now we all know that we are right? But subhanAllah, if we actually break this down to how our body turnovers, you realize that this is literally true in the sense that you are literally what you eat. Your, for example, your small intestine cells, they turnover, they turn over 2 to 4 days. Your stomach 2 to 9 days. Your red blood cells around 3 days, right? So during this month, for example, if you're going to eat fried foods or fast foods, or soda or junk food, what do you think is going to be the substrate or the nutrients that are going to be used by your cells to have? How do you think your cells are going to? Are they going to be the best quality of cells? That is when you start having the deficiencies, right? That is when you start having the disease where you are, you need to take your multivitamins. Unlike shouldn't take multivitamins when you don't have deficiency. You can because our food is, nowadays so deficient in the nutrients in the solid growth, for example, like, the time spent on the grocery stores. But again, we're not relying on this. You can have once or twice a week, but not on the days, right? So you can see that literally what you eat is what you are. Right? So inshallah, if you eat healthy food, nourishing foods, halal healthy foods, that is how our cells are built. So as Muslims, we often hear and we have to understand that these two things that we hear in the outside world, that do you eat to live or do you live to? We do neither, right? We eat to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to follow His commands and to worship Him, right? So alhamdulillah, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok is filled with recipes over recipes of delicious food with cheese bursting out and chocolate bursting out, and that is tempting. But subhanAllah, we have to understand that we are Muslims. We are the Muslim who controls our nafs, right? And now, how do we do that, right? So I'd like to ask you to close your eyes for just a minute, right? Close your eyes and imagine the kitchen of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What do you think is going to? You can obviously first thing imagine honey and olive oil, right? And vinegar, barley bread, whole grains, and other fruits and vegetables that I mentioned, And now think about your own kitchen, right? You can immediately see the difference between that. And you know the changes that you do. I don't have to tell you. No one has to tell you that. You already know the changes that you need to do, right? Inshallah. So these are just that are that inshallah we should strive to include not only in our kitchens but also in our daily lives. It shouldn't be that these are kept for special occasions, right? So this such a beautiful topic, a whole other book topic as well, where each food has its own verse in the Quran, its own hadith, its own benefits as well. So inshallah maybe I can come back one day and get problem with that. But I'll be just highlighting a couple of the foods that I should put in this Ramadan. So let's get down to the practical tips now, right? How to prevent overeating is food. And this I feel is especially important for us mothers here who have children who are fasting, right? Because this is the time when we also, unknowingly encourage them to overeat. But one thing you also have to understand is that satiety is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? There is no two things here. One is fasting is going to give you some amount of hunger and relief, because that is the whole purpose of fasting. And that is the reason why the more fasting is so good, right? There is no magic food that's going to keep you completely like normal and happy like the normal time, right? The God happiness that comes from fasting. And this can be nourishing liquids, right? So water, milk, honey, water, nabi, you know, I think you enjoy nabi, that we served over here, that is just one way to drink nabi. The other, and then there is a slide that is also about how to make nabi. Eat smart, not move. That should be how our should be, right? So what should be the few things that you should be focusing on soluble fat? So I know that especially in America, with very long fasting hours, our go-to super is always being oats, right? Because that is easy and just filling. But then recently I started, having more barley in my diet. And subhanAllah, the way barley will feel is no match for them, even with this. And what I mean with barley is not the pearl barley, it is again the barley, but the halm barley. Right? You can get that on Amazon as well or any other street store. So this is the whole barley in which the just the husk is removed, but it is still full grains. So you can either get the flour of that, like the flour of barley, or you can just use the whole barley and then just cook it in milk with a little bit of oats, or just clean it up with oats. And nuts, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, all of these are sources of sodium fiber. Protein, right? You need to have protein to fill this up. So whether it is eggs or meat, fish, meat, chicken or fish, lentils, proteins will you up much more than in and healthy fats. Again, avocado toast is a favorite simply because it is keeps you feeling full for a long time. So instead of eating more, learn to eat smart, where you're going to feel full. And now comes the important part. How are we going to have a healthier income? Right? So inshallah, the first and most important thing is to plan your income. Right? If at the time when you're fasting, when you're so hungry that you want to eat anything and everything, if you start cooking then you're going to fill up this whole table. Right? So always try to have a menu for yourself so that you know that okay, what on Monday, what am I going to take on Monday, and what am I going to cook on Tuesday. So in this way you plan your time and you prevent food. The next thing is the swap method. What does this mean? You have the you're swapping some unhealthy ingredients for healthier foods. So try to make sure that you have whole wheat, which is a sunnah, oat flour, coconut flour, almond flour, right? So it's when you are having your parathas or your other things, for example, waffles or pancakes, you can easily sub this for these healthier flours. The red meats can be subbed for other sources of protein like mushrooms, fish, veggies, and vegetables, especially in hidden crops. We all know that our Prophet love meat, right? Love cows, love pumpkin. So how are we going to include this during Ramadan? Are we going to have them, for example, this is one way, like for you can make cutlets or patties with grated meats in them. Are you going to puree the pumpkins into soups, right? So these are different ways that you can incorporate vegetables into your daily diet as well. For example, my most of the usually I add very tiny chopped carrots, bell peppers, and other vegetables as well, which peas. So instead of just having a meat, you're having other forms of vegetables. Sugar obviously can be replaced with honey, date syrup, fruits, and ruhafza, everyone's favorite, which is full stop and all the potatoes, can be replaced with honey water, that means herbal teas, kombucha, which is halal, and yogurt drinks. These are all better alternatives to having the ingredients, inshallah. So just like I mentioned before, whole grains, right? So now you might say, is this a sunnah? Yes, this was a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ did not eat white flour, and then some was asked, and did you sip? He said, no, but we just used to blow it to remove the chaff. So we can see that the most amount of nutrients are actually present in the bran layer, which is the outer layer, and the germ layer, which has the antioxidants, vitamin E, which are food to give you the white flour. So actually, I'm trying to make sure that you have full grains, right? So avoid having excess of croissants or Hawaiian or all which are just white carbs and are going to give you just like thick empty calories, right? Now you might say dates, obviously dates is a sunnah food, right? Why one included dates every time every iftar. This is because even the dates that we use can have a difference on the amount of calories that we're taking, right? Ajwa dates are, for example, these 7 Ajwa dates have 120 calories versus the metric dates that you usually find in Costco and other grocery stores are so big and juicy and always feel high in calories. Right? The two vegetable dates have 130 calories. So when we are trying to follow this that I'm saying, we only have 1 date and 3 days and 5 days, 7 days, you can see that 7 days you can almost have like around 70 to 80, right? So it's plus days, kind of days that you prefer is going to have a difference. And this actually has also have dates and also be changed in this Ramadan, right? So apart from having dates in which we balance it with the date, watermelon and cucumber, you can also use it in place of sugar, right? So the date syrup, you can have it in chocolate milkshakes, date milk, French toast, you can have, you can use dates in the form of energy bars, you can use it in cakes, right? So you can use this not only just to break your entire fasting, you can also have it afterwards throughout the month. Now, for those people who are not familiar with hadith, this is a prophetic drink. It was one of the drinks that our Prophet ﷺ drank very often, and there are a lot of hadiths about this as well, right? So just to give you a brief explanation about how to make hadith, you can soak in one of the dates, whether it's 1 or 3, and or you can soak raisins, but never together in the same vessel, right? So choose either date or raisins. And then in the morning, that is because Ramadan, before during Suhoor, that is before you can fast. And this actually really helps in reducing acidity, constipation, which is a big problem as well. One of my aunt, she has such severe acidity in the day that she would actually need to take medication every single day. And then when I told her about the beans, we started making the beans, her acidity and bloating just went away. Right? So this there is not only a physical, there is not only spiritual benefit of following Sunnah, but there is also a physical benefit of following Sunnah, inshallah. So when you take this base in the beef, you can use it in many different ways. You can either just have the base which has 100 machine, just eat it, or you can blend it to get smoothies or oats, or you can have it today without I mean it, you can just blend it into the water and add lemon juice and have it as a fresh drink. Inshallah. Use this within 12 hours, or you can keep it in the refrigerator for 3 days. After that, it would not start becoming alcoholic, so we don't use it. And now I want to bring your attention to such a beautiful hadith of our Prophet ﷺ. He said, Jabir said that when any of you drop a the Prophet ﷺ said that when any one of you drop a mouthful, we should pick it up and then we should eat it. We should also wipe his fingers and the plate. What this means is there is barakah in every aspect, in every little bit of humanity. And we often see that it is during Ramadan that we actually tend to waste a lot, right? We make a lot of things that we then like we should we eat and then we realize that we stop and then the food is waste. In the masjids, there is so much food being distributed. People take it again, thinking that they're going to eat it, but they don't, and there's so much food that is wasted. So inshallah, this is a reminder for every one of you to make sure that we're not wasting. We're only cooking as much as we are eating. We're only taking on our plate as much as we're going to eat, inshallah. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the food of one person suffices for two, the food of two for four, and the food of four for eight, right? So inshallah, we know that what we think we need is actually enough for is it good? So we actually need much lesser than what we think we need, right? And now you must think that way, but medical science, nutrition tells us I need to eat 2,400 calories, 2,800 calories, and we have all these thoughts that how are we going to, what do you mean by this? Then there's a beautiful thought, right? That we need to remember that a believer eats in one thing at a time, that will be satisfied with a little bit of food, and that's not forget the unbeliever eats in 7 minutes time. So subhanAllah, what we sometimes when we go to use these apps like MyFitnessPal, we're not getting our calories, we're not getting our protein. Don't think that we need to eat more to make sure that we are getting calories. As a Muslim, subhanAllah, we need to respect the other. And especially one thing I would like to remind you during this time is We are seeing our brothers and sisters and innocent children in Palestine suffering from lack of food. They're being starved at this point in time. So this Ramadan, remember again, when you are cooking food, and make sure that you're not wasting any of the food, because we have our dear brothers and sisters who are literally dying without anything. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that take your adornment, eat and drink and wear your clothing, but just don't be excessive, because He does not like those who come in excess. So this does not mean that we don't eat, we don't drink, right? We can eat Ramadan. We just have to make sure that we don't go in excess of that. Now you might think, okay, does this mean that I can never eat my food? Does this mean I can never go to my family, right? So subhanAllah, we have, our Islam isn't answered by everything. For example, when a person sins, right? Sallallahu says that the blood dot appears in his heart. But when he asks forgiveness, when he asks repentance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like this, blood dot goes away. It is only when he does it again and again and again that eventually the full heart becomes blood and he goes away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this can be applied to the way we eat as well. For example, if we are going to have 1 week or 1 week or 2 meals in a day, right? Or we have your chocolate, you are having cookies, you are having your candy. It's going to be a rare occurrence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala functioning with a kidney that helps in removing these toxins and helps in removing these impurities, right? And we can always come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and eat better, healthier options next day. We can fast the next day, right? When does this become a challenge? When we are eating this food every single day. If we are going to have soda in our refrigerators and we're going to tend to go to that soda every single day, that is when it's going to become a problem for you. If you're going to give your children convenience the round, the fast food, and burgers and fries every single day, if you're going to pack their lunch boxes with the cakes and the cookies and the Gatorade every single day, that is when it's going to become a problem, right? So inshallah, you have to understand that having it occasionally here and there is, like we mentioned, it's not the best, but it is okay. But it is only when you are going to have this every single day that it becomes a problem. So when as a Muslim, we need to understand that we need to do every day with ihsan. We aim for perfection. We strive towards perfection, right? Inshallah. So, and you see that in this day and age, almost all of our diseases that we have, that we are faced with today, are because of having excess food. We are not mindful of it. We are not following the hadith of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where he said that first, right? Whether it is heart disease or type 2 diabetes or cancer or blood pressure, most of this is because of the food that we are having. Like you mentioned earlier, a person can get any disease and tell him what to do, but we know that a lot of these foods are because a lot of these diseases are because of what we are eating. And sometimes the sad part is we don't even realize what we are doing, right? We don't even know is a croissant good for you or bad for you. For example, people, right, we buy the cost of croissants like as an everyday breakfast, but these croissants are made with refined flour. These have artificial flavorings in them. So is that food that you can have every day? We have the plastic water bottles. Some people, that's all they drink in all right water bottles. They don't have filters. It has so many chemicals and non-stick cookware. These are the cookware that we have every single day. So subhanAllah, we have to educate ourselves. We have to gain knowledge in every aspect that is going to help us become better Muslim, inshallah. So I'm going to summarize today by saying that Ramadan, let's make an intention, inshallah, to follow the things, right? One or two things can change how we are going to show up in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every day. Personally, for me, the one thing that I started doing in my life was reading the that was just the one thing, the one change that I started making that then eventually snowballs into me trying to become a healthier and better version of myself every single day. And we all are working towards that, right? We can never attain that state of perfection. We all try to work hard, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, we are going to go so this and continue that afterwards. I'm going to take up this. Whether it's you are stuck with that, or it's you're getting up value, or you have a copy every single day, from now starting experiment copy, but maybe from another store, right? But that again has the artificial sugar and flavor. Maybe you don't say I'm gonna make my own coffee. So what habit you want? Make the intention of that to that we're doing this to reach us around the child, right? To eat simple food and to control the lust, right? Eating food is also a way of worship. So, and another way that you can make it intentional is fast and Ramadan, obviously, as the Muslim tries to do. And then we want to continue with the Sunnah fast, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives so much blessings in Sunnah fast. So, one of your intention can be this. And finally, lead by example for your family, right? You cannot have a software and tell your children what to do. You cannot not exercise and then tell your children you need to be. So lead by example. So, Aisha radiallahu anha said, Allah said, do good deeds properly, sincerely, and moderately, and know that your deeds will not make you into paradise. The most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most regular and constant, even if it's so inshallah, let's make this intention today that we are going to get better in every year. Subhanakallah. The first thing, so we have.
Yeah. You guys have time questions? If you have any questions, please let me know that going forward.
No questions today? Inshallah.
Sorry about that. Majority of the time.
My name is Lovely. I am a work with always in research. Along with this, I'm also a master's student. I have experience in oncology, cancer care, and actually in medicine. At my health organization, I do run the wellness series here. So I have a lot of experience in training and studying about different health and wellness. Today we're going to be going into the mind and body. And then we're going to explore this intricate relationship that we have with the mind and body and gut, and how all of that interplay to grow that. Some of these tips, especially friends.
So as part of my series, I've always been a quick agenda, just so you know what to expect. We go ahead and discuss what the trilogy is. Then we go into the power of the mind. Then we'll go into the gut brain axes, followed by physical health and symptoms. So we're going to begin and unfolding this layered guard stuff today. I want you to imagine your body as a system, where your mind, the guys, and the body are isolated instruments, but they're interconnected parts that all of them have to move appropriately to create this harmonious melody. I'm just going to go and talk about these. There's any type of discrepancy here. This moment is corrected. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed into the mind. So the mind, our thoughts, emotions, and mental state can be a powerful conductor of the symphony. Stress, anxiety, and our mental well-being don't just go down until they enter your entire body. So imagine your mind and God speaking to one another, and language that you cannot hear, you cannot understand, but you can certainly feel it. So when your mind is stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, it'll send signals to your. Have you ever had your stomach turn you with irritation or experiencing loss of appetite when you're having these situations? Those are some positive examples of how your mental state can actually manifest in your health. There's this two-way communication pattern that occurs. This is called the gut brain axis. But the gut and the brain actually influence one another. It's not just what the feelings in your body. These psychosomatic symptoms will actually imbalance. So you could have headaches, muscle aches, fatigue, and even change in your appetite or gastroenteritis. The key factor here is that these symptoms are actually influenced by your environment. The relationship between your mind and thoughts is quite interesting. So when your mind is actually under stress, you can your body contains a bunch of different bacteria and when you have feeling of, an imbalance that's literally have an imbalance house. You have a little brain can potentially it's kind of like feedback with like share hurt, the mind is the balance, and determine the influence of mind. And understanding this relationship is quite crucial. It tells us that when treating our mind is being able to so let's see what's happening here. So you have to consider your mental and emotional well-being on what's going to be. So maybe if that's when you experience any of these symptoms, maybe it's hard to consider what's actually going on in your body, but not just to your mind. So we need to acknowledge these emotional psychological factors so that you will confidence in those very habits. So let's go ahead and move further into the number way. So this isn't just about digesting these, actually the guys often call your second brain. And the reason is because it's something for space, information from your capital brain. And you can have issues with emotions and clarity, and actually science that will prove our principle between your emotions and your well-being. So all of this published knowledge go into specific aspects of our and your serotonin levels are incredibly tied to that. So 90% serotonin, which is the transmitter, and this is more responsible for regulating food is absolutely in your gut. So if you have a deficiency in serotonin, you can actually experience the present rate of anxiety. So there's always embodying research, scientific data collected on this related with mental well-being in the gut. And the gut brain
the adaptive brain acts as a provider of basis, which in your sensory nervous system, which is very considered in your perfusion or through your entire nervous system, which is the so this communication involves different pathways in the neuron, endocrine pathways. So further, you can even feel in addition, we can have disruption in your lead pathways. If you have disruption in your lead pathways, you might be prone to being killed, or it takes you longer to recover from illnesses. So there's so much data and research that has been done. There's also going to be important to consider lifestyle factors. So each individual response can vary. So individual lifestyle factors of diet, exercise, stress management, rules in supporting your mental health. It's supposed to say to your butt up there. And I want to talk, so we can shift gears and talk about how you fix your guys. If you have the fact that you've already moved, how to maintain that. So they maybe have heard of webs. There's so much out on social media, talk shows, all of this on what probiotics may be. So I'm going to just talk about this so you're aware of it. So probiotics require to find these prebiotics in order to function in a sense. Prebiotics and probiotics will maintain your gut. So firstly, let's talk about these foods. So these are essential for the nourishment that feels the beneficial gut. Prebiotics are essential for the it stimulates the growth of pre-existing gut bacteria. Prior, you put back on gut bacteria. You refer to it with this pre-bacteria fully. Each of the prebiotics is okay for probiotics. There's some here. And there's things such as oats, bananas, chia seeds, flax seeds, red kidney beans, chickpeas, and you just name a few. And let's go into probiotics. Probiotics are related to the bacteria of the population of good bacteria. These are beneficial to the bacteria themselves. They have this biggest in this pathway. We want to find the protective food and sparkling, kombucha, pale vegetable, olives, vinegar. Now, we want to go from habits of we're on the journey and further implement these foods. It actually can take about 30 to 34 days for a to start to effect. So when you incorporate these foods, go and you go and start with then you want to fix the lining before you add medication to continue fixing foods on your so if you have before you do add into it, and they support everything from nutrient absorption and immune function, it potentially influencing our mood. Into the population is a great position because today is the modern medicine. I strongly believe in habits and supplements to incorporate your diet. I strongly believe it's important to use food that is readily available foods in order to regulate yourselves. And I'm disagree as well. So a wise person should consider that food is a great human life that food calories. So food should be exactly what you want it to be. Your best friend or your so use it to your advantage, use it to heal yourself. About the role of physical health. So physical health is going to be foremost in this. It's not merely about being fit, it's about understanding your lifestyle. Exercise that you do, the food that you consume, the quality of sleep that you have. All of these shape your mental and physical health. It will nourish and active vitamin C and elevate your mental clarity and your gut function. So here we talk about actually effective. So we already know exercise and really items. But beyond exercise, it is important that you're not just lifting heavy weights, but you're just doing low impact movements that keep yourself effective and functioning. Your metabolism is working after these low impact exercises. With Ramadan, just right? It is important that you still maintain some form of low impact movements. So whether that be 20 minutes of yoga, 20 minutes of walk, whatever your body is able to do, you can next, the dieting. Talk plenty about those diets today and what to put into your diet, but it's always best to get as nutritious of foods as possible. Things that do not take so long to get from the ground to your mouth is the best way to incorporate these foods. And now finally, sleep. Sleep is actually an underrated word that's often not discussed. So you may have heard of this term rest and digest. What is happening when you rest and digest? You yourself are sleeping. However, your small bowels, your colon, everything's actually very busy with sleep. It's digesting. Your digestive system is very active while you sleep. So when you have changes in your sleep regimen, you may experience maybe conflicts of travel where you feel bloated and not the greatest with your digestive situations going on. This is likely because you rest portion of digestive filter. And so I know Ramadan is here, they have some disrupted sleep, but as you know, right, breaking your fast, having your sugars, it's important that you eat foods that are highly nutritious and high in fiber so that everything breaks down easily and having some kind of fried chicken or something that will take longer to digest. So that within that 6 to 8 hours, if you're able to get that 6 hours straight, it'd be best because your digestive system will be hard out during that time. Okay, so now let's go ahead and tie this into Ramadan and gut health. So your gut microbiomes nutrient absorption, metabolism, and storage. Can fasting cause digestive problems? The short answer is yes. When you break your fast with carbohydrates or high carbohydrate foods, will have different effects on the body, and it will also depend on the type and amount of food that you consume. And of course, your individual metabolism and your individual overall health. So when you fast, your body goes into a state of ketosis. Ketosis is where you store fat for energy instead of using glucose and carbohydrates. And you break your fast from carbohydrates here then disrupts this process, which will then cause you to sense at the sugar level and create insulin resistance. So you can then have a range of so hunger cravings can be one, consuming high carbohydrates after the fast become a sudden increase in your blood sugar followed by a crash, and cravings and weight gain. How many of us have the 30 days diabetes and have this and have no is maybe because we're eating five types of food. Assuming these high carbohydrates weight gain at the end of the insulin resistance. We talk about all this insulin some of this. So this is because we consume these high carbohydrate foods after whole day fasting, you're increasing increasing how the sugar the insulin is not supposed to be because there's too much sugar. And then of course the digestive issues. Bring to the public value was thought about specifically studies around Ramadan specifically that happens that we found that we increased levels of acid reflux, increased levels of indigestion, and we have increased levels of heartburn. And this is because fruit we are getting our body large quantities of fatty, spicy. It's just things to consider as we're doing this. And now, can fasting fix your gut? Absolutely, most certainly can. Again, privileged guidance on the internet fasting can actually benefit your gut health, boost your gut microbiome. So So fasting promotes a healthy gut environment and is increased by microbiome diversity and improves your body to reproduce its own essential fatty acids. And again, it's fixing your gut health. And so it actually feel better, you feel lighter, you feel fresh, clarity as you have this prepares. Go ahead and have them all just stand up. Sitting up, quite some time. If you would like to participate, stand. You don't want to go active. I just want all of us to have attention of this whole house. Slowly, go ahead and stand. Sit for a while. Roll your shoulders back from your mat for me a few times. I want you to ground yourself in your shoes. You can untouch that jaw that's been tightly sitting up here. I want you to just be at peace with all that you learned today. You're going to be guided, stride, and calm, belly, and exercise. So go ahead and children can sit and want you to lean to one side, gently tug. So go ahead and do that a couple of times. At this point, you will take focus. We're now going to proceed into belly breathing. So you put your stomach here and your stomach there. You're going to inhale through your nose for 3 seconds. Pause and you're going to right? So go ahead and inhale 1, 2, 3. You're going to rise and exhale 4, 3, 2. So continue to notice the rhythm of your breath. Rise down. Allow yourself to absorb the tranquility. Sense of peace and relaxation as you're moving. May you be able to carry all of your learned today. One, you focus yourself on really taking. Thank you for letting guide you and go ahead and take a seat. So we reached the end of the journey today by exploring this major urban mind, body, and past. I want you to reflect on everything that you've learned. Each of these elements are not separate. We're holding entities that work together and repair everything order to have beauty and the approach and overall quality of life. These discussions that we had today about mental state, about health and vice versa are significant and can impact the physical as both. And I encourage you all to do some small steps, small changes you can incorporate your day-to-day practice. Whether it's incorporating mindfulness, diet, or any all of these skills will lead your more harmonious life. Please be sure to recall it's not day, it's it is not a day. So I hope you all stay happy, stay great, and thank you for joining today and we'll be great. Any questions? Thank you for staying in for our time.
Probiotics that you listed take for children, for example, kimchi.
Good question. I actually not certainly maybe there should be a nutrition on that. And because you also have to look at how this process has to be. And we have a woman.
You mentioned that breaking her fast with carbs is not ideal. So what would you suggest? Were you talking about like fried food or is it just all carbs? Like
Talk about high carbohydrates. So for like majority, a lot of us will break our fast with date. Fast. I also incorporate items healthy fat foods, that is, that's pistachio, something that's also fatty, so that your body is able to break it down slowly and you don't have that sudden crash. I just meant to regards to high carbohydrates because a lot of times when you're eating a lot of foods that we may not generally eat. So, like getting these fried chicken wings and so on and so forth, that may not be best for us. They spike up that slowly because you just took a bunch of carbohydrates and those fatty and spices, all these different things that may not be best for that. So just break your fast with something simple. Fats, taking fat for sudden that short increase in your insulin, that sugar, that's what you're gonna need just to kind of get it kind of value. That's for the video things. It's just anything beyond.
And I like how we did the deep breathing, and it's amazing how every time you sort of pause and meditate certainly in a certain way, you end up feeling better. My question is, do we have any connection with this kind of practice with our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam doing it in a certain sense, significantly? Does it connect with our spirituality as such?
I would want to tell you yes. I don't have any issues. So I'm not going to touch upon this. Yes, but
If you don't mind, I can. So subhanAllah, we see that when we read the Quran with the right tajweed, when we have to stretch all our rhythms, we are actually reading. So we can see that this is, like the non-Muslims have a meditation separately, but for us Muslims, it's actually literally built into how we read the Quran. So we have to read it with the right tajweed and the right pace, and with the correct pronunciation. The deep breathing does come into play. If you don't have the right lungs, like the lung capacity, you will keep stopping, you will keep stopping, you will not be able to stretch 5, 6 months. So that's where the deep breathing comes into.
MashaAllah, so much better than doing your courses screen with the screen.
With observing Ramadan, it's the best way to keep the household diet healthy and consistent so that you're not making something that and separate for
I would recommend that you implement to your families so that you know why you're doing what you're doing, so that there's a reason behind it. Specifically, been tailored to the age of the children that you have. If they're in the schooling, then that's why. So they maybe let you know this is the reason, this is why it's great for our health, it's part of Islamic teachings, this is why we're eating for that. But I don't recommend writing it out structure by structure. So first we're having this week or for these 3 days, and then for dinner by something else entirely. Maybe just writing out this structure and let it be the kind of all involved in the decision. That's about it.
Share. He raised to say it's not for everybody. How they go on, we have some of this, it's a process. There's one, the other ones that we keep. Some others we are going to talk about things that we can we get this time? Things we talk about.
Um,